Welcome to the podcast series Talking Success, connecting the global FinTech community. I'm Stacey Jafta, and today I'll be chatting with Alicia Levine, Chief Operating Officer at Chipper Cash. Chipper Cash is a venture capital-backed financial technology company that builds software to enable free and instant peer-to-peer cross-border payments in Africa and Europe, as well as solutions for businesses and merchants to process online and in-store payments. Hi, Alicia. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. I'm glad we're finally recording. We've been talking about this since mid last year.
Yes. A lot has happened since then.
I'm excited to dive right in, but how about you give a quick overview on your career, and then I want to hear more about what Chipper Cash is doing.
Yeah, great. Would love to start there. And thanks so much for having me as a guest. Really excited about this. So I think actually what you asked me and kind of when we chatted before, you asked me to talk a bit about my life journey and what actually led me to becoming the COO of Chipper Cash. And so I'll dive into that a little bit. And as I was just thinking about this question, I think for everyone, it feels like such an interesting time to be sort of reflecting on, how we've gotten to where we are now. Given COVID and given that we've sort of, in a sense, been forced to kind of be where we are in a way that we haven't been forced to be where we are in a long time. And I was just thinking, in 2019, when I joined Chipper, I traveled a ton, I think over 100,000 miles. And I wasn't even in one place for any longer than a few weeks at a time. And I think, COVID has made us all slow down. And I've also had the time to kind of think about, where am I and how did I get here? And honestly, actually listening to a lot of podcasts and reading a lot of books. Yeah. And recently, one of the podcasts I was listening to was talking about, what are kind of our personal values and why are we doing what we're doing? And I started thinking about that quite a bit. And I started thinking about, okay, what are my personal values and how has my life path brought me to where I am? And I think that I kind of tried to distill those down into two things. And I think that what's really driven me and brought me to where I am is sort of, I love sort of learning and really learning through experience. And secondly, also just building connections with people. And I think the learning through experience, when I think back on sort of my life, I've always loved to travel. And I started traveling when I was 12 years old. I got an amazing opportunity to go to Japan for 2 weeks as a 12-year-old. And I think that just kind of unlocked my exposure to learning through experience. And I kind of think that traveling is like the easiest way to learn in a sense. And sometimes I feel like it's a little bit, yeah, exactly. You're always learning when traveling. And so I think that just opened my eyes to different paths of life. And as I sort of look at my career, I've kind of always gone towards the, how can I do something that's different because it's more interesting because I'm learning something. Yes. And so that was kind of like, in going off to college, I went to the furthest place I could think of. When I was graduating from college, I just didn't take the job that was sort of easy and right there in front of me. I looked to do something different.
Where did that stem from?
It's a good question. I think, everybody says it's from their childhood and their parents. But again, I think it's really from this love of learning and curiosity and my early exposure to the fact that traveling and doing different things was almost like a hack to learning. The easiest way to learn is just to go somewhere new and expose yourself to new experiences and different people. And in that way, you're just literally always learning. And so I think that at various points in my life, when I graduated from college, I moved to Peru because I got a job opportunity there to teach English, which led to some other things. I sort of always kind of looked for jobs that were a challenge to me, that had an aspect of travel and international exposure. And essentially, that's actually what led me to becoming COO at Chipper. I got an opportunity to take what seemed like not the most interesting job as a project manager, but the company was working on really interesting things in San Francisco, including connectivity in Africa. And I took a job as a project manager there just after meeting the co-founders. And that led to moving to Kenya, building a company in Kenya,
Wow.
getting exposed to FinTech and financial inclusion, and then meeting the co-founders of Chipper Cash, and the rest is sort of history.
What are you guys currently doing in the payment space? I want to learn more about that. And I'm sure once the pandemic hit, you pivoted a little bit, or you honed in on a specific project.
Yeah, so I would say actually we totally doubled down. And so I guess just to start out with, Chipper Cash, what are we doing? Our mission is really to unlock global opportunities and bring Africa together one transaction at a time. And that's sort of a mission that I'll unpack that a little bit. It has both sort of the aspect of unlocking global opportunities. And so while we're focused on Africa, we definitely see a global opportunity for digital payments. And the second part of that is bringing Africa together one transaction at a time. And that's really a shout out to sort of our core product, which is peer-to-peer payments across Africa. And so practically what that means is that Chipper Cash is an app-based peer-to-peer payments service that really reduces friction and the cost of sending money across borders in Africa. So if you're somebody in Nigeria and you want to send money to somebody in Uganda for whatever reason, for, maybe you run a small business, maybe you have your child who's attending college in Uganda and you need to send them support to do that, etc. Download the Chipper Cash app, go through the KYC process, connect a funding source, which is a bank account or a mobile money wallet, and you have the recipient do the same. They also download Chipper Cash, and you can send money to them with the best sort of cross-border rates and no fees.
I see Chipper Cash everywhere, and you guys have such big things in store. I can't wait to see.
Yeah, definitely. And with the pandemic, definitely, there's been a focus by, lots and lots of companies and even governments on increasing digital payments and the digital payment space. So we've definitely seen more use cases for Chipper Cash during the pandemic. And we don't see that going away. Even as the pandemic hopefully is coming to a close in the next few months.
We're evolving, and how we've now seen how simple and easy it is to transfer money or just tap our phones or tap our cards. Going and having to draw cash from an ATM, I know that's really prevalent in Africa, but I see my peers and people that never used technology to pay. Now it's becoming their go-to.
Absolutely. And I think, a large part of our user base is also sort of the younger set that is more open to trying different ways of transacting. And so they may not even have a bank account, or they may, they might use mobile money, but they've seen that they can use something like Chipper Cash and not have to pay the high fees that oftentimes they incur when they're using mobile money to transact locally. So they're more open to sort of trying out these new things. And once they see that they work, it's kind of like, why go back?
Exactly. Wait, Alicia, I'm excited to take it a few steps back. I want to dive into your earlier years, as
Sure.
I was somebody who researched possible job opportunities every day. Anyone that knew me in high school or university knew that I was just so eager to learn about different opportunities out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blessed to have a career development center at my university to help me navigate my future. You didn't go down the traditional route of applying for jobs, but rather created the job that you wanted. There isn't enough education around different career paths. How can somebody learn about the vast opportunities out there? And what advice do you have for someone wanting to create their dream job?
Yeah. So thanks for that question. And I feel like, again, it sort of goes back a lot of times to what you were exposed to at an earlier age, or, as you're sort of formulating the ideas of, what you want to be when you grow up. And I think I was really, really, really fortunate to have a father who, from a very early age, I saw build his own business, work really hard to sort of, he became an attorney when I think I was 6 or 7 years old. So he was studying for, in the US, it's called the bar exam, and then built his own law practice. And so we grew up sort of seeing, our dad worked really hard to build his business. And I remember, from a young age, him always saying, your goal should be either work for yourself, which is what he was building his business to do, or create your own job. So, okay, maybe you don't want to work for yourself, but you should be finding a way to add value to an organization that is both interesting to you, as well as provides value to that organization. I mean, I remember being in sort of, in my teens or sort of even leading up to college and thinking like, that seems so hard. Like, what value do I have as, a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old to, graduating from uni or whatever it is, to add to, what value do I have to add to a big company? And I remember like one time him bringing a newspaper article to, I think it was my sister at the time who wanted to work in health education, and saying, look, here's this company that's working in an area that you're interested in. Why don't you write a letter to this or an email to the CEO?
I love that.
Tell him, that you want him to hire you to do, X, Y, Z. I don't even remember what it was. And we were just like, yeah, okay, whatever. That's too hard. We can't do that. But, I think that like just having that seed planted, even though at an early age we were like, that sounds impossible, having that seed planted, I think I sort of carried that with me. And it's interesting that you mentioned that you were blessed by having a sort of, career services department at your uni, because I think that sometimes it's a blessing, but also a curse. Because I think there's this big fallacy that sort of what's going to get you a job is like having a really great CV and a cover letter. And I think that sometimes that works. But I think as you get sort of, and maybe this is true further along in your career, it's like you need to have the CV and you need to have the cover letter. But what you really need is an idea of what you think you want to do. And then just talk to people, in your network. Well, I guess it's a little bit different now with COVID. But, go to events, go expose yourself to people that are working in something that has to do with what you think you might want to do.
Yes.
And it might be the same function, it might be the same industry, it might be the same region, and literally just start talking to them and learn about what they're doing. And I think that people, they can see passion, they can see, somebody who's really motivated, and I think that, a lot of times people who are further along in their careers are always happy to share, but they're also, sometimes happy to like take a chance on somebody who just really has shown passion or interest in what they're doing. And so I think the most interesting jobs I've gotten have been through, I would call it chance. But, on the other hand, I definitely put myself out there. I forced myself to go to these networking events. I forced myself to go to these conferences. I forced myself, to talk to people when I wasn't really feeling like talking to people. But, I would go to an event or something in whatever city I was living in and say, okay, I'm going to talk to 5 people and, just see if, what they're doing, anything interesting. And if I want to continue talking to them and then eventually you start planting a lot of seeds and eventually, some of them start to grow, surprisingly.
I couldn't agree more. What I did in my early days is I tried out so many different internships. So this was a point where I knew it was only going to be 4 months. I went into university, study business marketing, and it was so easy, and it could have easily turned out to just going and working for a marketing agency because that's what everyone else was doing. So what I did is I tried different industries and different positions and departments within different internship experience I had. And I realized, okay, I did not want to do anything that I initially thought I wanted to when I stepped through the doors of university. So the one piece of advice I have for anyone stuck, and people come to me saying they have no idea what they're passionate about. And I say, if you don't try something, you'll never find what your passion is. You might think working in social media is, you have an image of what that is, and then you work there and you realize it's nothing like what you thought it to be. So for me, I'm like, just try new things and meet new people.
Yeah. And actually, you're reminding me of an example of when I was actually in a job that I was learning in, but I wasn't super passionate about. I saw that there was actually an opportunity to do pro bono work with a nonprofit. And so I was still in my sort of consulting job, and I started doing pro bono work for that nonprofit, and that ended up turning into the consulting work, or the pro bono work that I was doing at the nonprofit ended up turning into a full-time job.
Exactly.
Because I liked working with them, they liked working with me, and so it was, I was able, I guess, to do exactly what you're referring to, but like test something out, but still have the comfort of not needing to quit my job and do something which seemed quite crazy at the time. But yeah, I would say so. Companies are like open to pro bono work, to consulting, and once they know you, you've worked with them either pro bono or on a short-term consulting project, they're much more likely to create a space for you. Exactly. And oftentimes, when you're volunteer or you do just a short-term project, you also have the ability to define that project, which could lead into a job that you're essentially building for yourself.
And now you're the COO, you're supporting the CEO, but the overall job spec of a COO changes every day. We were laughing at how jobs chop and change, especially in the startup environment. And what the heck is a COO? How was this learning curve when you first joined Chipper Cash?
Yeah, well, I can say that the COO role definitely did not come with a job description.
Yes, it never does. Never.
So that was absolutely the first thing that I had to work on in a sense. But I think when I joined Chipper Cash, my main objective was really to complement the CEO and our other co-founder, who was the head of product and engineering, and to sort of see, okay, where are their gaps? But essentially, how can I start taking things off of the plate of the CEO so that he can focus on things like fundraising or, talking to strategic partners or any of these other things that, I know that he is amazing at and that he loves doing. But other things like managing, a team of 10 direct reports just didn't make sense to him.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we kind of looked at was like, okay, what can I kind of just take off of your plate, so that you can do more of the things that like you as the CEO, only you can do, and that you're really, really good at, by the way. So it was a lot about like, okay, how do we shift things off of your plate? And then the second thing, after sort of a number of weeks in the organization and kind of chatting with people, I saw things that I really thought would just really improve the organization globally. And so at that point in time, we were, I think, about 20 people globally. And we were setting ourselves up to grow and scale quickly. And in regards to number of users and even the team size, the company had grown quite a bit in the few months before I joined. And so there were a number of things that I would say in the first few months were really key priorities for me. One was around really improving internal communications within the team. So they had grown from sort of 10 to 20. They were, or even less. They had been like a small group that, could chat on a regular basis over WhatsApp or just in a few Slack channels. And then they had suddenly grown to like 20 or 25 people. And at some point you can't have one-on-one conversations or personal conversations or the entire company in every meeting knowing what's going on. And so you have to sort of institute some sort of types of organized internal communications. And when I say internal communications, one of the other main things that I saw that really, really, to me seemed really important as we were setting ourselves up to grow was alignment of the team around our company objectives. And then around our mission as an organization and what our values were. Because again, when you're small, you don't really need to codify those things. Everybody just kind of just lives them and they know them and they, but as we were getting to 20, 30, 40 people, it became really clear that we needed a centralized way of communicating our organizational goals and making sure that everybody was aware of them and tracking them. And then, what is our mission? Codifying that. What are our values? Codifying those. And making sure that everybody just understood where we were headed as an organization. So I would say that was kind of like number 2 was communication, but that kind of also, communication indirectly led itself to alignment around organizational goals, alignment around mission and values, etc.
This leads perfectly into the next question, because I know that you recently adopted the OKR goal setting tool. How has this been? Do you feel like this is a great way to measure success in the business? Are your teammates more driven and focused? How have you found it?
Yeah. So I guess it's not as recent anymore. I mean, I think it was probably about a year ago. At this point.
That was when we first spoke. A year ago was like when you were first adopting this.
Yeah. And so, like I just mentioned, for me, the thing that was honestly most important, which I think is sort of a precursor to everything else, is just alignment around like, what are we trying to achieve? And so I really liked the sort of structure of OKRs because, one of the main objectives of having OKRs is essentially making them public within the company and making them very transparent. And so one of the first things that I did when we started saying, okay, we're going to start using OKRs is making sure that we have a company monthly all hands. So in every all hands, I talk about the OKRs. And how they're quarter. First of all, I guess also they're quarterly OKRs, which helps us sort of things are changing quickly and moving quickly. So while we have sort of annual objectives, we kind of break them down into quarterly OKRs, which is what we share internally with the team and talk about every month. But I think just making those public, making those transparent, and talking about them every month internally with the entire company helps us understand, okay, look at the various parts of the business and what's actually happening. And the OKRs provide us a framework against which we can have discussions about what's going on, what's impacting our business, what's going well, what's not. And also the other goal of the OKRs is really to try to help people connect what they're doing on a day-to-day basis to where we're going as a company. So if I'm a customer operations person and I spend 8 hours a day responding to customer inquiries, sometimes it's really hard for me to see like, how is that actually pushing the organization ahead? But when we talk about our monthly OKRs in our all hands meeting, we can very clearly see that, okay, one of our main objectives is around monthly active users. And we know that the more we support our customer base, the more engaged our user base will be. And so I try really hard, and I know the other leaders within the organization try really hard to make sure that even though right now, to be honest, we're really focused on the company level OKRs, and hopefully we do have some other departments or some other teams that use them internally with their teams. I would love to see them, built out across every team and drill down to each individual. But still at a company level, we try to, as we talk about the company level OKRs, make sure that people can connect what they're doing on a day-to-day basis with those monthly OKRs, and how they, and what they're doing has an impact on those company-wide OKRs.
when the pandemic first hit, my team switched from KPIs to OKRs, and I love it. First of all, you can keep track digitally. You can see how you're contributing to the business through a percentage. You also see how the rest of the team is doing, if they need help, how you can support different people. I love that it is so open. It also keeps you accountable. My team knows this. I'm such an OKR freak. It really drives me. That's me being honest versus just knowing every quarter.
Do you have a favorite tool that you use to track OKRs?
Yes, so we have this tool called Ally, ALLY. One, it is not that expensive. It is digital. It's integrated with Slack. It's integrated with other systems as well. You can integrate it with your CRM. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And we use it across the business. Every department is linked.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head too with what I like about OKRs. It's really bringing transparency, because I think, especially with so many teams remote, so many teams global, so many teams digitally based. It's just so important to see, to have that transparency and to be able to have everybody able to see what's going on with their colleagues and in different teams. And again, connect back to how am I impacting, how is me sitting in front of my computer all day, all, quote unquote, all by myself, impacting, how the company's doing.
Alicia, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Where's the best place for listeners to reach you?
I think LinkedIn, it works really well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I always love chatting to you.
Thanks so much, Stacey.
Enjoy your day. Bye.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Talking Success, Connecting the Global FinTech Community. Feel free to follow us on LinkedIn at Talent in the Cloud. And if you're interested in exec talent, expanding your team, or you yourself are looking for a new, exciting change in your career, check out our website, talentinthecloud.io.